Good afternoon. In today's globalized world, the impact of the US election stretches far beyond its nation's borders. China, in particular, will be affected by the next president's stance towards this growing global rival. How the US and China proceed in their relations over the next few years could have wide-reaching repercussions. Join us as we uncover what China wants from this election and how its future may hinge on the next American president. Welcome to In Depth.
We will build what I call an opportunity economy.
We will make America great.
We're ready to fight for it. As one people, we are moving forward.
We will make America safe again.
This US presidential election will set the course for relations with China for the next 4 years, with profound implications for global trade and diplomacy. A recent article in the Asia Times has drawn attention to the impact on US-China relations in the event of a Trump or a Harris win. According to the outlet, Chinese experts believe that Harris would be more predictable as her Democratic Party is more driven by policy continuity. It added that while Trump is seen as unpredictable, many speculate he may be willing to negotiate with China if a deal brought actual economic benefits for the US. The world is watching closely as the United States gears up for its presidential elections tomorrow. China is among those paying particular attention, viewing the event as crucial to its national interests and global strategy.
The implications of the US elections extend far beyond American shores, with China's government keenly aware of the potential shifts in foreign policy that could emerge from the election results. China's primary concerns revolve around trade, security, and the ongoing technological rivalry with the United States. If a new administration takes power, it may alter the trajectory of US-China relations, especially concerning trade tariffs and sanctions. China primarily focuses on how the outcome could affect critical areas such as cybersecurity, investment flows, and military posturing in the Asia-Pacific region. Moreover, China observes US sentiments towards Taiwan and its allies, as these issues are pivotal to its regional ambitions. Beijing hopes for a diplomatic approach that allows constructive dialogue rather than escalating tensions. Ultimately, China seeks stability in its relations with the United States as a significant player on the global stage.
No one can sit on the sidelines.
As we await the election outcome, the question looms: will we witness a shift toward cooperation, or will existing tensions deepen? This election not only shapes the future of the United States, but also the dynamics of international relations, particularly with China. The world awaits in anticipation for the results and their potential impact on global stability.
Now, to discuss this, we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Eric Brown, who's a Republican strategist, and Nauman Abu Issa, a member of the Democratic Party, who's joining us from Iowa. Welcome to you both. Let's start with you, Mr. Brown. To what extent will the election outcome impact the future US-China relations, differing from if it's a Trump presidency or a Harris presidency?
Well, I think there's a marked difference. I think that there's a difference in the way that the candidates each approach foreign affairs. I think that the outlook on trade in particular is different, even though the outcome in terms of the actual policies themselves have remained relatively the same, considering that Biden's tenure in office has seen the same tariffs in the same industries at around the same percentages hold that were put in place going back to 2017. But I think bigger picture is strategic outlook for the long term. in terms of the United States and China working cooperatively and in a more transparent and open and positive relationship.
And Mr. Abu Issa, what about you? What do you think the differences will be between a Trump and a Harris presidency when it comes to the agenda towards China?
I think the biggest difference is since even President Obama talked about pivot to the east, and that means having alliances in the East Asia to work to contain China. I guess that was the objective to have a containment with a coalition of countries, and that's what the Democratic Party feels like working with countries in that part of the world to contain China versus Trump. I think want to do it unilaterally and also have across the board tariff on all products versus the Democratic administration is more targeted products like high technology chips and such things which are essential to the American economy and does not hurt the American consumer by adding 100% tariff on everyday objects which are used by the American society.
And coming back to you, Mr. Brown, of course, Xi Jinping has already had one term of a Trump presidency. He's also had the Biden-Harris 4 years. Who do you think is his preferred candidate to be in the White House in January?
I think that Beijing wants Donald Trump in one respect, but I think in another, there's a case that can be made for their desire to have Kamala Harris. And I think that the reason there is that they respect strength and they would respect the relationship, like you said, that they've had with Trump in the past. With Harris, I think they may see someone that they could perhaps get more favorable outcomes that are advantageous to them with, or in a worst case scenario, one that would be hesitant to show strength in a situation where it was necessitated to protect one of our allies.
And Mr. Issa, Trump's policy towards China during his 4-year term was one of his standout features of his presidency, but it was kind of changeable, and he's kind of known for being transactional as a leader. How would you evaluate Trump's track record with China, but also how would you see it going forward?
I think President Trump has, concentrated on China, similar to what the Democratic administration also concentrated on China as the main competitor for the United States. It is the largest country in the world which can affect the influence of the United States across the globe, and the Democrats are doing it in an institutional way where we depend on many institutions in the United States to evaluate our options and present the best options and use those options as best strategy to go forward versus President Trump is off the cuff type president who does what he feels like doing, and many times he does not listen to the institutions in the United States, and that is will be a danger for the foreign policy of the United States. That is a huge difference between a systematic approach, a strategic approach versus off-the-cuff, basically taking emotions into account and trying to satisfy some of the American public versus trying to have a systematic step-by-step containment for China.
And Mr. Brown, Trump, of course, has focused on the potential economic effects of competition with China when it comes to American jobs. You mentioned the tariffs which he wants to put on goods in a way to make America great again, as he says. What do you think? How do you think it will work in reality if Trump wins?
Well, I think what I believe we'll see is what we saw when he was president for 4 years: is lower costs of goods, lower interest rates, greater opportunity for people to begin their lives in a more positive way, in renewed fashion, coming out of probably the worst 3.5 years on record and in memory. I think it's important to notice also that the comment that was made earlier, I think, has some validity, but should be challenged to the degree that much of Trump's rhetoric is just that, is rhetoric. I believe that Trump does, in fact, utilize the institutions and did so as president. One thing to keep in mind as well, though, is that those institutions themselves, whatever they may be, I think we're all aware of what sort of hand of influence can exist behind the scenes to be corrupting with regard to countering the interests of the United States. So a strong leader sometimes will hear their institutions, hear their advisors, listen to them, but not necessarily simply rubber stamp what they'll do. With Kamala Harris, that would clearly be the case. She's not intellectually curious. She's not aware of the issues. She doesn't know what she's doing. It would be basically turning over the country to the bureaucracy.
Okay, well, I'll hand that over to you, Mr. Issa. Obviously, because Mr. Brown is clearly not a fan of Kamala Harris. What would you say? You can answer that point that she doesn't know what she's doing, but also, what would the Harris presidency approach to China be as well?
Well, the Harris presidency is a presidency of laws, international laws, and coalitions. For example, the previous president Donald Trump does not believe in NATO as a coalition, and the current administration does work with NATO and does energize NATO to be a helping force in the global containment. China, and we saw that China was able to penetrate the European Union and some of our NATO allies during the Trump administrations, and some of them were really afraid of a Trump administration because he said that they have to be on their own, and the current administration assured the protection of our NATO allies in Europe, and even working with the Japan and the East Asia forces to contain China. And the difference is that Donald Trump want to do it unilaterally. He does not feel that we need to help anybody, and nobody else will help us either if we don't help them. So there is a great power struggle here between the two options. Is the United States can do it alone, or do we need our NATO allies in East Asia to work hand in hand to day in day out to contain China? China is a growing power, is continuing to be a growing power. We've changed our policy from engaging China to containing China, and that is a big difference how we approach this containment. This containment requires us to work with many countries because as one country in the Western Hemisphere, we are not able to limit China's influence in Africa and Asia. So that's why we need to work in coalitions similar to what the current administrations try to work with India and other major forces in the globe.
And Eric Brown, isn't it the truth that the reason why Beijing would like Trump in the White House is because all you need to do to Donald Trump is to flatter him a little bit, and basically you can manipulate him to get anything you want?
No, I don't think so. I think that's an oversimplification. I think it's an oversimplification the same way as it is to create the straw man and say things like Donald Trump doesn't respect NATO. I think that's an absurdity. I think that it insults the intelligence of the American voters. They know that President Trump is for a strong national defense, strong national security, strong relationships with our allies. Those alliances are longstanding. They are confirmed through a process with the United States Senate. By way of treaty, and we are obligated to the defense of those nations. That is exactly what NATO is about. There's nothing that Trump ever did that would bring that into question. What Trump did, in fact, though, was to call them out, the countries themselves, for not paying their fair share. For years, the United States has been subsidizing the European experiment so that they can have socialized welfare programs for their citizenry while not paying the percentage that is due for their defense and participation in NATO. That is the exact subject matter that riled everyone up and has led to this canard about Trump disregarding NATO. So would Beijing be able to manipulate Donald Trump? I don't think so.
And Mr. Abu Issa, of course, the one thing that the American people are voting on, or one of the most important issues, is the economy. And the American economy seems to be going okay, but people do not feel it in their wallets, in their pocketbooks, on their day-to-day lives with inflation and stuff. And also, of course, the relationship with China is very important to that. Given the record of the Harris-Biden 4 years, how will things be different?
Yeah, well, I think that
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry, please.
The economy, I believe, is one of the major issues for the American public to base on their vote. And the American economy is the strongest economy in the world, has been growing, one of the strongest growth in the world. Also, there is a major difference between the Democratic administration and the Republican administration. The Republican administrations feel that the millionaires should pay no taxes and should have all the privileges, and the companies should also have all the privileges, versus the Democratic administration feels that the middle class and the poor in the United States need the social program and a break in taxes. And that is a major difference between the two. For example, Donald Trump himself does not pay much in taxes, even though he is a billionaire, one of the richest men in the United States, versus Kamala Harris came out as a daughter of two immigrants, grew up in the middle class and knows exactly the suffering of the middle class. He tries to go to McDonald's to show off once in a while, I guess, and try to be part of the working class, but he is not part of the working class, and he has lawyers to shield him from paying taxes. And that is the major differences where the Democrats feel that they are on the side of the working class. They are endorsed by the labor unions. They are on the side of the laborers when they protested against the big corporations making the mega money, like Donald Trump likes them to do. And we have seen a great gap between the rich and the poor in the last few decades, or the administration needs to bring that gap closer to make to allow the services, especially like healthcare and basic services, to the lower class. If we are allowing the pharmaceutical companies to charge as they please, they are charging doubles and triples what they charge for other countries, even our neighbors in Canada. And there is a need for the Democratic administrations to put some limits on those companies' profit, and that will drive the price down, and that's what the American people are asking for.
And back to you, Mr. Brown. Given Donald Trump's unpredictability, why wouldn't a Harris presidency be the safer bet?
Well, I don't believe a Harris presidency would be a safer bet. I actually think some degree of unpredictability is a characteristic of strong leadership. It accounts for the fact that if you're going to negotiate and you're looking for the best outcome for the American people, you want to keep your opposition guessing. And the reality is that we are in a trade contest with these countries. We don't want to see that escalate into a trade war, certainly, but it's really difficult to know where those lines are. What we do know, though, is that, for the last 3 years, we've been still running a deficit with China at the rate of 400 billion, 382 billion, 359 billion year over year. That's something that's going to have to be addressed. And I think President Trump, when he assumes office, he's going to have to balance the interests of tariffs on China with the interests of overall economic strength for the country.
And Mr. Issa, Harris gave a quote about her policy towards China, saying, "A policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century." It's pretty vague, wishy-washy stuff. If she wins tomorrow, can we expect to hear something a little bit more concrete about her policy towards China?
Absolutely, yes. The winning the competition is really investing in the upcoming technologies and focusing our energy into strategic sectors, not across the board tariff like President Trump likes to do. There is a difference between putting across the board 100% tariffs to close the deficit gap and versus working with the rare resources to target strategic sectors in the technology, in the defense, in the security, and data information management. Those are AI and other sectors like this are the future of economy, and this is really takes a concerted effort to be targeted with our approaches, not being unpredictable, but we need to be studying systematically what industries matter the most, and how can we bring the best benefits, best bang for the buck, as we say in the United States, for our approaches. It's not not being predictable. No, it is a systematic approach with the strategic studies need to be conducted, and that's what will be directed by the current administrations to put more resources into those issues. It's not a one-term strategy. It's multi-term strategy. We need to start with our universities, with our scientists, and with our research, and figure out how we can continue to be the leaders in the globe for the benefit of humanities. And that is a major difference between the two, where he goes and try to satisfy the public with emotional statements and predictable statements, like you said. So there is a major difference between the two administrations.
And Eric Brown, how might the election result affect U.S. alliances in Asia, of course, particularly in addressing China's expanding role in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, I think, the issue of domestic stability and global influence is a big one, and I think that the effect could be catastrophic, to be quite honest with you, if we don't have strong leadership. And that's particularly why Donald Trump is best suited in this situation, to remind China that while we can have a positive relationship with China, that is not just about us winning the 21st century, but is a win-win. One where there's more transparency, more honesty, more openness. With regard to Taiwan, which I think is the issue that we're touching on here specifically, the United States needs to follow through on its commitments to countries. And Taiwan is a country that was formed by people who were fleeing the oppression of communism and Marxism. And that country has stood up against that for many years. Now, I know Chinese don't like to be qualified that way or to hear that. But the reality is, it is no more justified for them to have their eye on Taiwan and claim in some regard that it belongs to them, or that one day it will by force need to be reunified, than it is for any other country to see some piece of land and simply say...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. I do apologise, we are running out of time, but just in one word, speaking of relationships between Trump and countries in Asia, should we expect more love letters between Kim Jong-un and a future President Trump?
I think a love letter would be a lot better than saber rattling or doing nothing, which is what we see from...
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to both of my guests, Eric Brown and Naman Abu Issa, who are both joining us from the United States. So the US election is more than a vote, it is a crossroad for superpowers. As America chooses, China watches closely, strategizing its next move in diplomacy and trade. With cogs turning in both of these great powers, who can say what the global impact will be? Only time will tell if the future holds harmony or division for the world's two largest economies. Thank you so much for being here on the program and joining us today. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.